everyone, today's video is going to be another in my Tortoise Hibernation series, and this video is going to be how to perform a pre-hibernation check on your tortoise, and this is to see if your tortoise is healthy enough to hibernate. But please check out my last hibernation video so you can find out when it is and isn't appropriate to hibernate a tortoise. So I'm afraid this video is going to be using some old footage of Sheldon, as I actually took too long to film this and she's already in hibernation. So you're going to see a slightly younger Sheldon in this video. So spur-thighed tortoises or Greek tortoises, Hermans, marginated and Horsefield or Russian tortoises generally have similar care requirements. So most of this information can be used for those species too, but there will be slight differences, so please make sure to do your own research as well. So it's absolutely crucial that you know your tortoise is healthy before beginning the hibernation process. So you want to give them several health checks in the run-up to hibernation, and I'll go through some important things to look out for. So with their eyes, you want to check for inflammation, swelling or discharge. With their nares or nose, you want to look for discharge or mucus. So discharge can be a symptom of runny nose syndrome, which can be highly contagious. So if you've got more than one tortoise, you may need to quarantine this one away from your others. So mucus also encourages bacterial growth and can put them at risk of developing infections like mouth rot. So with their mouth, you want to check inside their mouth for anything unusual. So I'll put up a photo on screen of what mouth rot looks like. It can give a red or purpley tinge, and it can appear as red blood spots or as like a cheesy yellow substance. So this is also highly contagious in reptiles. So with their shell, you want to look for any signs of shell rot, like bad smelling or squidgy patches. You want to look for any fluid under the shell or any pink areas, which could indicate a hemorrhage under the shell. I'll see if I've got some photos of this, because the tortoise that we rescued quite a few years ago actually had hemorrhaging under the shell. So I'll see if I can find some photos to put up on screen. If not, I'll put some up from Google. So with their legs, you want to check for any swelling or lumps that could be an abscess. So the abscesses in tortoises are quite common and can become really serious if they're not treated. So you want to check around their tail area and look for inflammation, any smelly leakage or any signs of internal infection. So for their ears, and yes, tortoises have ears, they have a thin membrane covering their ears and two large scales just behind their jawbone. So the membrane should be flat or a little bit dipped in. Abscesses are quite common here as well, and again can be very, very serious if not treated. So another critical thing to check is their weight, and it's really important to weigh your tortoise before hibernation to ensure that they've built up enough fat reserves for them to survive hibernation. So there are different methods of working out this for different species. So for Herman tortoises, you can use the Jackson ratio. There's a separate one for hatchlings and one for tortoises over 9 centimetres in length. But do be careful, because these scales have their limitations. So the Jackson ratio must only be used for Herman or Greek tortoises and never for any other species, because it will give you a misleading result. So tortoises with irregular shell growth or metabolic bone disease will also provide a misleading result. And you also need to take the measurements right. If you take them wrong, then the results will be meaningless. So the Jackson ratio is a simple way of working out if Herman or Greek tortoises are a healthy enough weight for their size. So you measure their length in a straight line, so not over the bump of their shell, because that will give you an inaccurate result. The easiest way to get an accurate length is to push your tortoise up against a flat wall or skirting board, and it sounds a bit mean and I struggle with this slightly because Sheldon really doesn't want to put her legs in, so it takes me a little while to get an accurate reading. But you kind of push them up against the skirting board until they push their head and their legs in and out of the way, and then you slide a piece of paper underneath and kind of mark at the back end of their shell, and then I take the piece of paper away and measure that, and then you weigh them. I think it's always best to use digital scales because you get more of an accurate reading. So you want to weigh them once and then weigh them again a few days later to check that you've got an accurate representation of their weight, because a full bladder can make quite a difference, especially if you've got a small animal. And then you can plot them somewhere on the graph. So I'll put the graph up on the screen, which is from the Tortoise Trust. But the Tortoise Protection Group also have a calculator on their website. So you just type in the weight and length of your tortoise and it calculates whether they're an acceptable weight for hibernation. So if your tortoise falls into the underweight category, do not attempt to hibernate it. You need to seek your vet's advice and overwinter it, because the tortoise will have built up insufficient fat reserves and may not survive hibernation. And if you've got a female tortoise that seems really heavy and it may be carrying eggs, so then you may need to take them to the vets for a checkup and an x-ray. So for horsefield tortoises, there's actually an equivalent graph called the McIntyre ratio, which I'll again put up on screen now, and all the links for all of this will be in the description bar. So a pre-hibernation check is essential. Any illnesses must be caught early, and then you can treat them quickly to prevent them from becoming more serious and potentially life-threatening. If you think anything's wrong with your tortoise, then please get them to a reptile specialist vet with experience treating tortoises. So most regular vets will have very limited, if any, experience with tortoises. They are quite an exotic animal. So many tortoise organisations actually will keep a list of suitable vets. This will vary on where you live in the world, so have a look on Google, have a look on tortoise forums, see if you can find anything for your area. So something I forgot to mention is worming. So it's actually not recommended to worm your tortoise regularly. So the only time you should really need to worm them is if you see worms in their poo, or if they're losing weight, or any of those sorts of things. So maybe I'll do a separate video on that, but that's something that people historically did before hibernation, was worm their tortoises. If you are concerned, you can send off a fecal sample to have a worm count done. So some people like to adopt that as part of their pre-hibernation check. So if your tortoise is up to weight and you can't detect any signs of illness or abnormality, then you can begin the hibernation process. So never hibernate an underweight or poorly tortoise. And it's also sensible, like I said in my last video, not to hibernate a tortoise that you've just brought home or you've brought home in the last year, because if you can't be sure that they're 100% healthy, then it's not worth the risk, because it can take them a long time to recover from illnesses. If you're keeping your tortoise awake, you'll need to look into overwintering. So that will probably be the last video that I'll do in this series, but it's essentially keeping artificial light and UV light available as normal and keep feeding throughout the winter. The Tortoise Trust also has a great article on winter feeding, which I found useful before when I haven't been able to find as many weeds and flowers in the winter. So keep an eye out for my next video, which will be starting the actual hibernation process with winding down. And as always, like I say, useful links and further reading will be available in the description bar. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will speak to you guys soon. Bye!